Hello and welcome to this episode of Ritter's Rant. Today we're going to be talking about genocide. The United Nations Human Rights Commission has come out with a report that basically says that what Israel is doing today in Gaza constitutes genocide. No ifs, ands, or buts. Basically, every measure that Israel is taking in regards to the Palestinian civilians of Gaza meets the criteria set for genocide, set by the United Nations, set by the international community, set by the United States. And yet, the United States, and indeed much of the world, appears to be we just failed to acknowledge this. We were in denial. I just went for a walk today in my neighborhood, and I'm shocked how many signs are on the yards of people, we stand with Israel. Well, today, thanks to the Human Rights Commission, now we know that if you stand with Israel, you stand with genocide. And there's just no other way to put it. You can't stand halfway with Israel, partially with Israel. If you say you support Israel in any way, shape, or form, you're supporting a genocidal state. And so what is to be done? What is to be done? Because we're at the point where we have to acknowledge that Israel's continued existence as a viable nation state is an insult to humanity. It's a dire, direct threat to humanity because Israel only believes in Israel. Their leadership has all but acknowledged this. The bottom line is Benjamin Netanyahu has said that if Israel wants to bomb you, Israel will bomb you anywhere, anytime, any place. And as long as the United States continues to support Israel, then Israel will not be deterred in this behavior and will continue to behave as such. And what is the collective world going to do? We've seen the Middle East, the Arab world together with Iran came together in a conference in Doha to talk about how to respond to the Israeli act of aggression against Qatar, a sovereign state, an ally of the United States. And the end result is not a damn thing is going to happen. Nothing. Zero. The world is incapable of coming together to deal with Israel because of the United States, because of America's continued support of Israel. Now, look, American support of Israel doesn't automatically translate into a strong Israel. In fact, what we're seeing today is Israel floundering badly. Benjamin Netanyahu, the same prime minister that's ordered this genocide, has acknowledged that Israel today is largely isolated on the international stage, and he said that Israel will have to learn how to become economically self-sufficient. What a joke. The concept of Israel being economically self-sufficient. What he's saying is that Israel will have to learn how to live off of the aid, the largesse provided by the United States. Its only friend, its only supporter. And the irony here is that while America may seek to behave as a friend and an ally to Israel, Israel most certainly doesn't behave as a friend and an ally to the United States. I mean, historically, we know this to be the case. The attack on the USS Liberty, the case of Jonathan Pollard, the spy who stole the crown jewels of the American intelligence community and gave them to Israel, and then Israel sold them to the Soviet Union at the height of the Cold War, giving away everything. Is that what a friend does? We know that Israel to this day continues to spy on the president. They continue to implant electronic listening devices so they can find out what's being said about Israel. That's not what a friend does. Israel's not America's friend, but Israel can't survive without America being Israel's friend. And this is their Achilles heel. We need to find a way in the United States to create the political momentum that politically nullifies Israel's base of support here in the United States. President Trump has spoken about this. He said that already he sees in Congress that Israel has less influence on today's Congress than it has enjoyed historically. We need to make this even more so. But it's more than that. There was a time when the Ku Klux Klan reigned supreme here in the United States, especially in the South, but even in the North, where racism was accepted. Indeed, you couldn't hold political office unless you were a racist. Just ask Bull Connor in Alabama. Wallace again, Alabama. Um, you know, if you didn't, view the whites as the supreme race, you couldn't hold office. Well, America's turned the page. Why? Because we have gradually come to learn that racism is bad. That when we have a constitution that speaks of all men being created equal, that means all men of all colors, of all ethnicities, of all religions, equal in the eyes of not just God, but of their fellow Americans. So today, if a member of the Ku Klux Klan goes to the center of a square, flies the stars and bars of the Confederacy, puts on his white robe, and shouts, white supremacy, the vast majority of Americans are going to look at him with disgust. We're not going to rally around that cause because we recognize the evil nature of racism. That doesn't mean that racism doesn't exist. Of course it exists. It exists here in the United States. It's still a problem. But it's not mainstream the way it used to be because we have recognized the evil of racism. It is imperative that we start recognizing the evil of Zionism and equate Zionism to racism and treat Zionists with the same disgust that we treat members of the Ku Klux Klan, that we treat white supremacists, that we treat racists of any way, shape, or form. So that when people decide they want to put a "We Stand with Israel" sign in their yard, we collectively should treat that as we want to lynch black people because it's the equivalent. Because if you're saying we stand with Israel, you're saying we support the genocide, the ongoing genocide that's no longer a debatable matter. The United Nations has determined that Israel is committing genocide. The United States has, established a precedent of what genocide is and what genocide isn't. First of all, the United States acknowledges that this is a political question. That's sort of funny, isn't it? When we're talking about the mass extermination of people, it's a political question whether or not we will recognize it as such. But we did set a standard. If you take a look at what we called genocide in the past, for instance, the ISIS genocide against the Yazidi of Iraq, where ISIS singled them out because of their ethnic and religious affiliations and carried out mass kidnappings, the sexual enslavement of women, etc., the murder, the shooting. And we're not talking about huge numbers here. We're talking about tens of thousands of people. Very tragic. I'm not trying to minimize it. But we said that is genocide because ISIS singled out a group of people for this kind of cultural extermination. What is Israel doing to the Palestinians of Gaza, if not singling them out? I mean, it's time that we reflect on what's happening here. This is mass murder on a scale that's unprecedented in modern history. Mass murder of civilians, the deliberate targeting of civilians. They are shooting children in the head, the snipers, the Israeli snipers. Doctors are saying the corpses all have the same evidence, a single bullet in the head. Who's firing the bullet? The Israeli snipers. That means they're targeting children. They're targeting women. They're targeting civilians. They're targeting homes right now. They're dropping homes to do what? To ethnically cleanse a neighborhood, to drive people out, eventually to drive all Palestinians out of what is called Gaza, what is called Palestine. This is a crime. This is a crime against humanity, and it can't be allowed to continue. And yet, there it is, the mass murder of people. How do we stop it? We have to start calling evil for what it is. And Israel is evil. Israel is a manifestation of evil, and support for Israel can no longer be tolerated. We have to come together and start making sure that the people that support the Zionist entity we call Israel, this criminal enterprise, this cancer on humanity, that anybody supports that should be treated the same way as anybody who supports the Ku Klux Klan or other hate-based groups. We wouldn't allow Nazi Germany to reappear, would we? Oh, wait, we have in Ukraine. But the point is, no, we've recognized it. And I bring up Nazi Germany as a way of closing this. What's happening in Israel today, the mass eradication of in Gaza today, the mass eradication of an entire neighborhood to drive civilians out towards slaughter is very similar to what happened in Warsaw in 1943, April, May 1943, the final liquidation of the Warsaw Ghetto, where SS troops, backed by their Nazi auxiliaries, went in to finish off the remaining 70 to 80,000 Jews who live in a neighborhood where once were 400,000 Jews, but the Germans drove them out, drove them to concentration camps, killed them. Now they went in, there's some resistance. People were underground fighting. And over the course of a month, the Germans basically leveled the entire neighborhood, killing 7,000, capturing 7,000 more, and taking the 42,000 survivors and sending them to concentration camps, where the vast majority of them were gunned down within 2 days in a mass act of revenge. The Warsaw Ghetto, right next to the Warsaw Ghetto, is a park, the Saxon Gardens. And you have to know that in the Saxon Gardens, which are just beautiful, there had to be Polish civilians walking there while the eradication of the Warsaw Ghetto was taking place. Now, there was a wall. Maybe they couldn't see it, but they could see the smoke. They could hear the sounds. They could hear the machine gun fire. They could hear the explosions. They could hear the scream of the women and children. And they did nothing but to continue to stroll. That's the world today. We're walking in the modern day equivalent of Saxon Gardens, while the Israelis commit mass murder and we pretend it's not happening. It's time to tear that wall down. It's time to call it out for what it is. It's time to demand that it stops. It's time to hold Israel accountable for the crimes they are committing. That's my rant. The next time a thought crosses my mind, I'll be sure to let you know. Thanks.